We are asking for our national resources to be used to take the illegal immigrants out of this country. From building to building, they must go.
That's been the rallying call of South Africa's anti-immigration movement, pushing tens of thousands of undocumented migrants and foreign nationals to leave the country in recent weeks. But will it solve the country's migration challenge? Now, the unofficial June 30th deadline for undocumented foreigners to leave South Africa has passed, and without the widespread violence as many feared. But tensions remain high as campaigners vow to stage weekly marches every Thursday until the government meets their demands of tackling illegal immigration.
This is the introduction and the beginning of what is going to be happening, going on, because we are going to march and march and march and march until they hear us. And whatever it takes, we will do it until our government learn to respect and understand that we are the ones that matters than everyone else that they are prioritizing outside of us.
Malawi, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Mozambique and Ghana have organized voluntary repatriation of their citizens back home from South Africa. Security forces say more than 25,000 people have been repatriated in recent weeks, with many others waiting to leave.
They treat us bad. We are not happy. We don't have freedom. They treat us bad, and they don't even care to even give us a residence permit because we are in Nigeria. If you talk too much, they will arrest you and put you inside. So I am happy that I'm back home.
Anti-foreigner groups are accusing undocumented migrants of taking their jobs, straining public services like hospitals and schools, as well as fueling high crime rates. But what does the data show? Now, latest official statistics show that there are more than 3 million migrants in South Africa, which is about 5% of the country's population. However, radical anti-immigrant groups claim that the country is full of illegal foreigners. There's also a strong perception that foreigners are taking away jobs in a country with a nearly 33% unemployment rate. But an analysis published by the Southern Center for Inequality Studies at the University of Witwatersrand shows that roughly 3.7% or 11 million foreigners work in formal jobs. As for the informal sector, data shows they make up around 18% or around 700,000 workers out of 3.8 million jobs. Researchers say immigrants are largely law-abiding, with most of them arrested for violating immigration rules and not for other crimes. Latest figures from the Department of Correctional Services show there are nearly 28,000 imprisoned foreigners, just 12% of those imprisoned. The Department of Basic Education have recorded over 253,000 foreign students in state schools, accounting for about 2% of the total students' population in 2025. But anti-migrant groups insist foreigners are overburdening schools and hospitals without providing any evidence to support their claims. Now let's hear more from Malipo Lukandamiza Mbalanga. He's the Executive Director of African Refugee and Migrants Aid and Regional Secretary General of the Southern Africa Refugee Organizations Forum. He joins me from South Africa. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. I'm so sure you saw what happened on the 30th of June. But as someone who works with migrants, is the latest wave of anti-illegal migrant protests in South Africa different, and why?
Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you for inviting us. This time around, the xenophobia attacks against refugees is showing again that there is division in South Africa. There's that approach that the government itself and also community from the ground that they've decided to chase each and every African. And what is disappointing is that the people that are being chased from South Africa, they're only black Africans. And from where we stand at an organization that advocates for each and every person, it's disappointing to see how the law enforcement, the South African government, and the March and March, how they are dealing with refugees, chasing people like they are chasing dogs from the house. And it's very disappointing, not only migrants and the refugees that are here legal, that's supposed to be protected under the international law, they are being also attacked. And there are no any enforcement of the law that we are seeing from the beginning of this event. And if you recall, for the past few months since last year, there have been ongoing attacks against foreign nationals. Even though you are documented, you have no papers or you have papers, still we are all subjected to intimidation, harassment, and attacks. And it's very disappointing because the government has failed to demonstrate that they have control over this type of xenophobia and the Afrophobia in South Africa. And on other points, what we are seeing is that they've been violation of human rights because majority of people that are being arrested and they detained, majority of them, they are being, some of them legally in the country, but they are being subjected to harassment, detentions without proper process in court of law.
Okay.
And to see each and every person, even those that are renting in the places where they need to stay for safety, they are being chased like dogs. And to us, as an organization that advocates for refugees and migrants in South Africa, we can see that this is worse than each and every xenophobia that have happened before.
All right. And you know, you're bringing in a very important discussion because you've talked about it's not only black undocumented immigrants who are actually in South Africa. We're also talking about other people. Then you also bring in another important aspect of violating human rights. So when all this is happening, how can South African authorities enforce immigration laws without violating human rights?
What we are always saying that allow the law enforcement to do their job. Because what we are seeing now on the ground is that even on the 30th, we saw in the evening after the interview that we had, our team on the ground, they share with us the pictures and the videos, seeing people, they are going and they're searching people's house and they're taking people out. Even children that are being assaulted, children are being injured. And to us, it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing. And in front of the police, and those actions are happening in front of the police, law enforcement, and nothing is being done. And hence we are exposing this type of harassment, human rights violation in South Africa. We have even women that have been assaulted. Children have been separated from their parents. They are taking parents and then they are leaving the children with no trace. As we are speaking, we have records of women that their children have been separated from them and the women that have been assaulted by police officers. And it's very disappointing. And it's something that the international community and the other organizations, both international and the local, they need to condemn this type of behavior from the law enforcement and from the March and the other political party, most especially the MK party and the other parties like your patriotic alliances and the other parties, which is like Action SA. The action that they are taking and the approach that they are taking against foreigner nationals is something that we need to call for, and we've been advocating for those people to even be sanctioned by international communities.
All right. So let's talk about the evidence. So the evidence does not support the claims of the anti-foreigner groups. So do you think it's a perception problem, and what can be done to change it?
Special question. That's what we are always advocating, and they approve of research and the statistics from Stats SA, from the South Africa Human Rights Commissioner, that there's no any proof that shows foreigner nationals, they are abandoning the hospitals. Since they start stopping foreign nationals to have access to hospital, there's no any proof, and the South Africa Human Rights Commissioner did confirm such. When it comes to schools, there is no any burden that we can confirm that there are a lot of foreigner children in schools. But what we are seeing is there's this narrative that's being pushed against foreigner nationals in South Africa. Why? Because it's the time of elections. Each and every political party is trying to win elections by scapegoating foreigner nationals that they are the ones that are burdening schools, hospitals, and the other different sectors within the community, of which there's no any proof that can support those claims. Because the statistics shows that is the small number of refugees and asylum seekers that they have access to educations, even social grant. Let me just mention this, right? Majority of refugees here, they are not receiving social grant. They are not receiving any assistance from the government. And those refugees, as we are speaking, those asylum seekers that we are speaking about, that's supposed to be protected under the international laws, that are trading street vendors, they are being removed from streets where they've been doing their work. And it shows that there is administrative xenophobia also here is that we need to expose. When it comes to documentations, the issue of documentations is that they always claim that there's a number and millions of refugees and asylum seekers and migrants here in South Africa.
Right.
There's no any proof that can prove, yes, there are millions of refugees and migrants here in South Africa.
Right,
Hence, we've been advocating for refugees to say that they can have even access to have a refugee camp here in South Africa, so that these attacks and the burden that they are claiming can be removed from the government of South Africa.
All right. So thousands of these undocumented foreigners, and of course foreign nationals who are in South Africa legally have left the country. So I would just ask you this as a follow-up question to what you've explained. So could this issue actually affect South Africa's economy? Because some of these people were employed, they were working, they're running their businesses. Could it affect South Africa's economy, the labor market, or South Africa's international reputation?
Yes, already the impact is there. The impact of what they are doing is there, because majority of the continent, I can say the rest of the continent, they are against what is happening in South Africa, of which the South African government need to be careful with, because if this ongoing xenophobia is going to continue, it's going to affect the economy of this country. As we've been claiming, we've been advocating that there's supposed to be a social cohesion within the communities, because when you see market approach of this type of xenophobia in the market, is that the majority of shops are being run by foreign nationals. If you look around in the 30th, all the shops, majority, I can say 80% or 90% of shops, they were closed. And those shops, they were run by foreigners. They are being run by foreign nationals. And you see even on social media, people are complaining because those shops, they are not operational. And they cannot now have access to the bread. They cannot have access to other essential goods, because those shops are run by foreigners, of which is going to have a negative impact to the economy of the country. It's going to have a negative impact when it comes to the picture of South Africa to international community, because majority of the rest of Africa, they are even boycotting musicians and the other people from South Africa to go and perform in other parts of the continent, of which South Africa, we need to be careful on what is happening, because the majority of artists, their plans of what they're supposed to be doing outside South Africa, they've been cancelled. They're saying, no, we cannot take you guys based on what we are seeing in your country. And we appreciate the government of Ghana, that they are going to put a motion in African Union to challenge South Africa based on what they are doing against African nationals. And that's what we want to see. We want to see a strong message against what is happening in South Africa from the international community.
All right, and as we bring this conversation to an end, I mean, this is not the first time several African countries have carried out voluntary repatriations. So how do you think it's likely to affect South Africa?
It's going to affect South Africa, both its reputation, because now we used to see South Africa, and South Africa from the global when it comes to the global south, is that it was one of the countries that have an influence both at the international communities and within our continent. But currently, the approach that the government have taken against migrants, that the history shows that each and every country, even South Africa itself, it was built based on the force of migrants, the power of migrants that built this country and the rest of the continent. And that is going to have a negative impact both to how people are going to perceive South Africa and how people are going to perceive what is happening within the government of South Africa and the rest of the continent.
All right. Malipo Lukandamiza Mbalanga, he's the Executive Director of Africa and Refugee and Migrants Aid and Regional Secretary General of Southern Africa Refugee Organizations Forum. Thank you for your time and for talking to us here on Africa Matters.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Now, staying in South Africa, where thousands of illegal and legal migrants from neighboring countries such as Malawi, Zimbabwe and Mozambique have become the targets of ultra-nationalist groups pushing a deadline for them to leave. Rumesa Choda reports on a Malawian who has decided to return home.
Ahmadi Asani is one of thousands of Malawian migrants who left everything behind in search of a better life in South Africa. But months later, anti-migrant violence fueled by ultra-nationalist groups forced him into another impossible choice: stay and risk his life or return home with nothing.
By God's grace, I got employed, and I had been working for 8 months only when the xenophobic attacks started. Luckily, I was among the people who were offered free transport to return home, but now we have nothing to do here for a living. Even if the situation normalizes, there is no way I can go back to South Africa because we used to run away from the police and some migrants ended up being hit by cars. I'd rather die here in poverty than go back to South Africa.
South Africa has long attracted those seeking jobs. But with unemployment about 30%, a government mired in corruption, and a crippling apartheid legacy, the mounting economic pressure has meant migrants have increasingly become the target of public anger. Authorities say more than 25,000 people, mostly from African countries, have been repatriated in recent weeks.
I returned home with nothing, and I don't know how my children and I will survive.
The March in March movement led demonstrations on June the 13th, the unofficial deadline they given all undocumented migrants to leave. The protests were mostly peaceful. Sporadic looting and violence was reported. As law enforcement rolled out a $35 million security plan that includes police and the military, police say they arrested more than 900 people during the nationwide protests.
Some were arrested for public violence, some for harboring illegal immigrants in terms of Immigration Act, some for business robbery at spaza shops.
Protesters have been chanting Abahambe in isiZulu means let them go or they must leave, a message heard quite clearly by many who have found their way home, marking not the end of a crisis but the beginning of another challenge. Rumeisa Chodar, Africa Matters.
Well, cross-border traders are also being affected. For generations, the border between Eswatini and South Africa has been an economic lifeline. But growing anti-illegal immigrant sentiment in South Africa is creating uncertainty for eMswati beyond the Ngwenya or Shok border, from where Nokuhanya Musi reports.
Everyday travelers stream to the capital, Mbabane, Eswatini's busiest transport hub. Many cross the border for work, trade, and to maintain family ties. But transport operators say uncertainty about illegal immigration enforcement in South Africa is a growing concern.
It's affecting the economy of Eswatini if passengers are not able to move about in between the two countries, and we do a lot of business with South Africa.
According to the latest South Africa's official data, about 700,000 travelers crossed between Eswatini and South Africa in 2024, with the majority crossing through the Oshuk border, which is along the N17 highway that connects to the Durban port and is also used for cargo bound for Mozambique. For Swazi families and traders whose lives straddle the border with South Africa, rising xenophobia is transforming daily commutes into perilous journeys, challenging the very foundation of regional cooperation that has long defined their existence. 41-year-old single mother Ngosimpilo Mthombo is one of the Durban runners, informal cross-border traders who buy goods from Durban and resell them in Eswatini.
I'm a hawker, and I've been traveling to South Africa for like 10 years now. That is what I do for feeding my family. And for the noise that is happening there, I'm scared for my life because anything can happen, even though they're not talking about Eswatini. But then still I'm scared. I just travel because that is what I do for my living.
Cross-border trade is a crucial source of income for informal traders in a country facing 35% unemployment, with just under half of the youth unemployed and where nearly 6 in 10 eMswati live below the poverty line.
The South African immigration enforcement, the activism that is actually happening there, does have a negative effect to the Eswatini economy and the people that are living in Eswatini. We know that there is a problem of unemployment and there is another problem of trade that will arise from this.
For now, traffic is moving in both directions. But many eMswati whose livelihoods and loved ones live across the border are not sure how long it will remain open to them. Nokukhanya Musi, Africa Matters, Ngwenya, Eswatini.
To Nigeria now, where authorities have had enough of imported cartoons on TV. They're now pushing for 70% locally produced animation content to counter the influence of foreign cartoons, which they say are shaping children's accents and weakening their connection to Nigerian culture. But as Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja, animators say Nigeria still has a long way to go to make that vision a reality.
4 years ago, Wisdom David introduced his then only niece to the Igbo language using animated videos. He never imagined it would become a family tradition. Today, the family has grown, and so has the audience.
I grew up in a home where I wasn't opportune to learn Igbo language, just like some of my friends. I wanted them not to fall into the same place.
Despite the rapid growth of indigenous animation studios and content creators, industry experts estimate that locally produced animations accounts for only a small fraction of what Nigerian audiences consume. Limited funding, high production and distribution costs, as well as the overwhelming dominance of foreign content remain major obstacles. In April, Nigerian authorities announced plans to push for 70% local animated content across broadcast platforms in an effort to promote Nigerian values, identity, and culture. But experts say reversing decades of foreign dominance will require grit, intentional policies, and years of sustained investment.
Just like most budding economies, right? Most budding careers, funding also is a big part of it.
Animators like Henry Ubogo welcome the government's push. For years, he has produced African-themed animated content for Nigerian audiences, often with limited visibility and support.
We're still working on projects even till this moment. We're focusing on African-themed stories for this year. We have a lot of work to do in the smallest unit of society, which is family, right? So I want to see better families in Africa.
Industry estimates suggest Nigeria's animation sector could require between $150 and $250 million investments over the next 7 years to achieve a 70% local content reach. But for creators like Henry and Emmanuel, their mission to preserve local identity through storytelling is already underway. Timothy Obiezu, Africa Matters, Abuja, Nigeria.
The Somali referee who was denied access to the U.S. to officiate the World Cup despite having a visa is inspiring millions of youths in Somalia who have chosen to dream bigger. Even though the U.S. government denied his moment in the spotlight, they still consider him a source of hope. Isadine Haji reports from Mogadishu, Somalia.
A painting of Somali referee Omar Artan is underway in one of Mogadishu's streets. For award-winning artist, popularly known as 4C, this mural is a symbol of hope and prosperity.
Our country is making a lot of progress. I want to show the rest of the world that Artan is a Somali and Somalis are creative. I also want to show the world that I'm an artist whose talent can never be hidden, an artist that can use his art to change the world.
Artan's first local match officiation since his return happened at Mogadishu Stadium. The Confederation of African Football named him Best Male Referee in Africa. And his refereeing journey began in Mogadishu when a leg injury ended his playing career. He then became a FIFA referee in 2018. The youth participating in this match say his presence is a pillar of discipline and dedication.
We are always behind him and we are happy for him. When he succeeds, Somalia succeeds. If he becomes sad, we will be sad. He's our brother, he's our inspiration.
Thousands of youngsters who hope to watch Artan referee in the World Cup might have lost interest in the tournament as a result of his setback. But now they are focusing on another upcoming international match to see their hero in action again.
It was really a disappointing moment for the Somali people, especially in the sports sector and for the youth. Since UEFA has appointed Artan to officiate a match after the discrimination that occurred, it shows that UEFA has saved world football and the purpose of football.
For 4C, Artan's mural on the walls of Mogadishu streets isn't just a work of art, it's a message, one that speaks beyond the striking colors.
For many young Somalis, Omar Artan's rise into the international stage is about more than football. His journey shows that talent and hard work can create opportunities. And his success is now giving young people across Somalia renewed confidence to chase their dreams. Isadine Haji, Africa Matters, Mogadishu, Somalia.
That's our show this week. Let us know what you think about South Africa's migration tensions or any other stories you've seen on this episode. You can leave your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.